Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, January 4th. Well, the last few days have been below normal temperature-wise here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Cold, dry weather continues for the next couple of days. However, next week, the second week of January, it looks like temperatures will moderate significantly here in the eastern part of the country. The cold and snow will retreat. In fact, high temperatures could reach 50 degrees in many parts of the Mid-Atlantic region by the middle of next week. Well, what about beyond that? The middle and latter part of the month of January. A couple of different things I want to focus in on over the next few minutes could certainly have ramifications for the temperature pattern here in the U.S. during the middle and latter part of January. First of all, there's a significant stratospheric warming event that's just now underway, and that'll continue over the next 5 or 10 days or so, and it could have significant impact on our temperature pattern during the middle and latter part of January. The other thing I want to talk about over the next few minutes is the snowpack across the northern hemisphere. That snowpack is above the climatological normals, and that too can have an impact to bring possibility of colder weather back here in the Mid-Atlantic region after a week of moderation comes next week. Well, let's start off by showing a 30-day loop of the upper atmosphere temperatures here at 10 millibars. This is way up in the stratosphere. You'll notice here, just in the last few days, a significant increase in temperatures over Asia right here. Just in the last 3 or 4 days or so, kind of an explosion of temperatures here in the part of Asia, in the upper part of the atmosphere, the stratosphere, about 10 millibars or so. So this stratospheric warming event is certainly underway, and this is one way to look at it. Temperatures were quite steady here for the first part of December and the middle part of December, but come the latter part of December, just in the last few days, a big warm-up in the stratosphere over Asia. Well, here's another way to look at this stratospheric warming event. The blue line here represents the temperatures at 10 millibars, again, way up in the atmosphere, the stratosphere. And notice here a relatively constant or steady temperature pattern right to about this point right here. Now, when this line here changes from blue to black, the black is the forecast from the European model for the temperature pattern at 10 millibars. This goes all the way back to November. Notice right here it started to increase dramatically over the last few days, and will really pump up temperatures here over the next few days before it starts coming down again. But this is just another way of looking at this stratospheric warming event. This is over the North Pole region, the 90 degrees north. Again, this temperature pattern is jumping here in the stratosphere over the next several days according to the European forecast model. Well, we'll take one other way to look at this stratospheric warming event. By the way, what is the significance of stratospheric warming? Well, in many cases where there's significant stratospheric warming, there's a displacement of the cold air that is normally entrenched and trapped around the polar regions. Sometimes the stratospheric warming will have an effect on the tropospheric temperatures in the northern latitudes, and that in turn will have an effect on the tropospheric temperatures down in the latitudes, in the lower latitudes, maybe some 1 to 3 weeks later after the initial warming takes place. There certainly have been some historic cases of stratospheric warming where there was a significant cool down in temperatures in the U.S. some 1 to 3 weeks later. One example is December of 1984 resulted in a very cold January of 1985. And we'll continue to monitor this over the next several days. But this is the current 10 millibar, again, way up in the stratosphere. Look at the North Pole. The North Pole right here, this little circle right here. Typically you have a cold polar vortex, and here we do right now over the North Pole and just on the Canadian side of the pole right here. But on the other side of the pole, we have currently a blob of warm air way up in the atmosphere, 10 millibars on the Asian side of the pole. Now take a look at what the GFS model is forecasting for 4 days from now. And here you go. You have quite a significant change in that polar vortex. It goes from this to this. And the warming now moves closer to the pole, which is right here at the tip of this arrow. And the polar vortex is actually starting to kind of split into two. One over North America here on the Canadian side of the pole, and the other still on the kind of on the Asian side of the pole here. But this polar vortex is in the process of splitting into two. Now let's jump ahead another 4 days. And here you go. This is the GFS forecast map, and indeed that polar vortex splits into two. Now both are kind of on the Canadian side of the pole. Warm air in the upper part of the atmosphere and stratosphere over the North Pole itself, but the polar vortex is predicted to go from this to this over the next 8 days. Quite an impressive and quite a significant stratospheric warming event that'll cause the polar vortex to split into two, weakening in the time frame as well over the next 4 to 8 days or so. So this is a significant stratospheric warming event that will occur in the near term. Now, one of the things we'll monitor with respect to the stratospheric warming event and what impact it may have are the oscillations that we typically talk about here, the Arctic oscillation and the North Atlantic oscillation, the NAO and the AO. They have been neutral to slightly positive over the last several days, but one of the tip-offs that this stratospheric warming event will indeed have an impact on the worldwide weather is that those indices will probably go negative over the next week to 10 days, and that'll probably indicate some colder weather will return back into the Mid-Atlantic region towards the middle and latter part of January. So the first thing to look for is a switch from positive to negative with respect to the AO and the NAO, and we'll of course monitor that here at the siweather.com. Well, one other factor I'd like to talk about now is snowpack, because that has a crucial effect on the development of cold air masses, especially when the snowpack is above normal, for example, in the source region for the U.S., namely Canada, Alaska, and even on the other side of the pole in Siberia, for example. The snowpack there and also in Greenland can certainly have an effect on temperature pattern here in the U.S. some 2 or 3 weeks later, even beyond that. This is a snow cover for the first of the year across the U.S., and it actually was the highest it's been in the last 10 years, and these kind of records seem to only go back 10 years or so, so it's really the highest on record, but again, that's in the last 10-year period. About 67% of the country was covered by snow as we began the new year. Now, much of this will retreat next week, because the second week of January looks like the cold and snow will certainly retreat. However, across the northern hemisphere, and we'll take a look at that next, the snowpack right now is above normal, so the combination of that above normal snowpack in the northern hemisphere and this stratospheric warming event certainly leads to the potential for cold air to return, and perhaps even more severe than we've had already in different segments of the winter come the middle and latter part of January. And here's a look at the snowpack right now across the northern hemisphere. This is prepared by Dr. Bob Hart at Florida State University. Black line here represents the current snow cover, whereas the green line here is climatology. And you notice here over the last several days, last few weeks, the snow cover is certainly above normal across the northern hemisphere. And again, this is important because an above normal snowpack can actually lead to the generation or regeneration, may be the better way to say it, of widespread cold air masses in our source region for the cold air, namely Canada, Alaska, Greenland. Greenland, by the way, has had some historic cold over the last several days with temperatures as low as 80 degrees below zero. So there is some widespread cold air masses up there, and the combination of this continuation above normal snowpack and this stratospheric warming event that is underway right now could very well send some of that cold air southward into the southern part of Canada and the U.S. come the middle and latter part of January, after a week of moderation come next week, the second week of the month of January. We'll continue to monitor all of this activity, both in the stratosphere and across the northern hemisphere, at the siweather.com over the next several days. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.